Hello and welcome to another audio analysis. In today's video we're going to be looking at the fourth single to be released from the upcoming album Tear Me to Pieces by the American rock band Story of the Year. The fourth track is titled War, and it's going to be interesting to see how it fits in with the other singles we've seen so far. Real Life and Tear Me to Pieces certainly delved more into those original sounds from the mid-2000s that we did have with the bands releasing albums such as Page Avenue, definitely going to more of those rock elements, almost delving into that sort of screamo and hardcore as well with a couple of those tracks and certainly some elements on it. Whereas with Take the Ride we certainly saw a very different shift in style, more towards their Wolves era that they've released in 2017, definitely incorporating more electronic elements, really making use of that and blending it in with the rock sound that they are very well known for. So it'll be interesting to see how this track actually does turn out. We are still expecting a very heavy track or two to appear on this album, and given the title War, I'm certainly hoping that this is going to be the one that is going to give us those heavier sounds. So without further ado, let's take a look at exactly how it does sound. Okay, straight off the bat we've got some really interesting things to discuss here. First of all, we have got the electronic drum opening, and this is very reminiscent of Silverstein or Silverstein, pretty much part of the world you're from, their track Bankrupt. It has that very much that same styling of the intro with the electronic drum beat into the sort of the screamed or shouted word, just singular word, into the very heavy chugging guitar. So that's certainly a very big comparison we can see straight away between those two tracks, and they have both gone down that same route over recent years with the styling on their music. We've also got a very interesting point in the part of these guitars here, that very glitchy style to the guitars that we had just then for a moment, sort of blending together that rock and electronic element, almost mashing the two together, gives off a really nice scratchy effect, which I really do like that we're hearing already.
Don't say that your words don't cut me deep with a knife, but
Okay, I want to quickly touch on this because this is the Story of the Year special, and you may not have picked up on exactly what it is, but what they do pretty much they do it on most of their music, is they actually get Dan and Josh to be the only two members contributing to a certain part of the track. So you'll notice you had Josh's electronic drum beat there in the background, and you had Dan's vocals, and what they do is they drown out the guitar and the bass either quite heavily or completely eliminate it, and you'll see they do this on most of their tracks, all the way back to the songs they're releasing on Page Avenue, and it's something that once you hear once, you'll notice they do all the time. It is their trademark style, trademark effect that they throw into most songs, so great to see that making a reappearance on this track.
between your teeth, you just smile and watch me bleed, but this won't take your pain away at all. You cut me open, leave me broken, just to feel alive.
So one thing I actually really do like with the electronic drums in this, it gives it a much more melodic sound. It really gives it a good pacing. You've got the actual natural drums really just being at a much slower pace, but these melodic drums mixed with Dan's kind of upbeat vocals, certainly just who had this nice mix, really keep the song at a strong pace. It stops it from being a really slow track.
You let me suffer, can't recover, was it all a lie? This won't take your pain away at all.
Another thing we see here as well with Dan's vocals is he loves to really stretch these notes out. They've done it on most of their work, so great to see them still making use of most of the things we would expect to see in a Story of the Year track. It is pretty much incorporating a lot of their iconic styles and sounds already from what we've seen.
The higher the wall, the harder you fall. Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war?
Okay, I do really like the higher the wall, the harder the fall. That was really cool, just to kind of drown the instruments out around it and really just kind of give it this effect of just you're setting up for something. I don't think the levels after that effective drop were particularly high enough. They feel like they're just really flat. It doesn't feel like you're hitting this really high level of sound. It feels like it is just missing a little bit. Could have done with maybe being a little bit higher.
Oh, this game will kill you when you sleep. Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war?
Now that's what we should have heard beforehand. Like, that's just a slightly higher level. You could just notice the gap between the two. That was much more effective. It really hits that kind of, hitting that point of the ceiling. Before we were just at kind of like just normal height level. That definitely needs to have that extra power to it, and you can see the difference between the two. You've almost got like a mini drop and then another drop a little bit later on with the scream. So quite interesting to see how they've mixed the two together.
Armor on your chest, with a barrel to my neck, while you're wishing.
Okay, I like some of the lyrics we've got here. So talking about the armour on the chest, almost covering up the heart so you go for the neck. It's that weak point, effectively, that you go straight for the jugular. So I like that they're showing this idea that you can have as much armour, you can have as much kind of put up a front, effectively, but there's always a weakness. There's always something to aim for. And again, that applies to war, to the title. There's always a weak spot in an army or something like that. So I like that they're tying in these lyrics, and they do this quite a lot in their songwriting. There is always a lot of thought goes into it, and we're seeing that through some of the lyrics that we're hearing so far.
The best, but this won't take your pain away at all. The higher the wall, the harder you fall. Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war this game?
Yeah, I definitely think it is it's just missing a little bit of just extra height on this part of the track. It's just not quite hitting the level I would like to see, just to really give it that oomph where it's sort of blowing your socks off. It just does feel like it's just slightly under the bar.
Yeah, well, when you slay. Did you get what you came here for? Did you think you'd take it all this game?
I'm not overly sold on the gay that way they're breaking that up. I feel like rather than doing that, you should have just held the notes. It's almost like they're trying to just put that filler in just to get to the next lyric. It just sounds so weird in the style that they're doing it. I get they're putting in these electronic elements, but it's something you would tend to see in a lot of R&B and a lot of rap, and it's not something I really associate with Story of the Year.
Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war?
Okay, I really like they did that. So what you'll notice maybe then is they actually dropped the levels even lower than we've seen throughout most of the track so far, but then what they did was they made it even higher. They made that gap like a canyon, and that's what you want to see. You want to go from these low points and blow through the roof. That took the roof off because the levels were so much higher, and that was perfectly done. I love the way you've got this really big contrast, and maybe that's the effect they were going for earlier on, but with a slightly different gap. It's almost like they're building up to this crescendo, this really big finale, and just really just kind of elevate those levels. So I'm really glad that they've done that.
The higher the wall, the harder you fall. Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war?
Okay, they've actually done something a little bit different with this ending part of the song, or so as we're getting further through it. They actually kept the level really high after the wall and fall part. So, and again, we've got this rhyming language, which just helps with this melody. Helps to keep it rolling along at a really nice pace. It just stops the song from becoming a little bit too slow. You're keeping that really good pacing, despite having the chugging guitars and the slower sort of normal drums with the faster paced electronic drums to really just keep the pacing.
Did you get what you came here for? Did you think you'd take it all? Will kill you when you slay. Did you get what you came here for? Did you come to start a war?
Okay, I love the little scream on the ending of the actual track. I'm presuming that is the actual end of the track. It seems like a fitting end to the little story we have got here. Okay, so definitely some really interesting points for this particular track. Definitely the main thing I want to touch on is the difference in levels between the drops. I really did like the way they had done that. I also love the way they used these glitchy, scratchy guitars to bridge the gap between the rock and the electronic sounds. It stops it from having this huge disparity where it almost sounds quite jagged. You almost have this sound sound to bridge that gap and really just pull the two genres together, because it's a mixed effect, which I really do like they did that. One other thing I really do like, I like the intro, just really having those electronic drums kind of giving that Bankrupt vibes, really, really great to see. The one thing I really wasn't over the top on was definitely the lyrics. They had some really strong moments with the armor and the idea of going for the neck, but they were a little bit generic. I feel like this song was aiming more towards a general audience as opposed to really just trying to hammer home a very important message. It did feel quite generic and accessible, which was great, but there were times where the lyrics were a little bit wrapped up and a little bit repetitive. Overall, I actually do think this song is going to be a bit of a grower. I think it's one of those that you're going to hear a few times and it's really going to grow on you, and you can see how they've drawn some influence from both sides of the spectrum on their musical styles, definitely blending that rock and electronic sounds from their past and present. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fits on the album. It was nice to see some heavier elements as well thrown in. I did like the way the band worked together and really culminated all these sounds, and it didn't sound like it was ever stepping out of line, which is really great to see, and I'm definitely excited to see what the rest of this album will hold. Please let me know your thoughts on this particular track, whether you're excited for the album or if you think one of the singles was much stronger. I don't think this is the strongest. I think it's one that will grow to become a much stronger one. I don't think any of them have really topped Tear Me to Pieces. That is definitely the standout of the album so far, and I'm really hoping that the album does live up to the success they had with their Wolves album. So that will be everything for today's video, and as always, if you want to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next audio analysis.